Hey, the Temptations, the Miracles, yeah, the whole Motown bunch, and
Bob Seger wasn't just a rock star. He was a voice carved out of soul, grit, and the hard streets of Detroit.
Every time they were sure they had you caught.
A man who turned working-class life into rock and roll gold. But even legends grow up listening to someone. So who inspired the man behind Night Moves and Against the Wind?
I was in a room with Stevie Wonder, the Four Tops, Diana Ross and the Supremes, and they're...
Today, we're counting down 10 bands Bob Seger could watch forever. The artists who shaped his sound, fueled his ambition, and helped build one of rock's most honest careers. Let's begin. 10. The Miracles. Bob Seger grew up in Detroit in the 1960s, and in Detroit, the Miracles were everywhere. Their music poured out of radios, bars, and street corners. You couldn't escape their sound. And young Seger didn't want to. Led by Smokey Robinson, the group ruled the city. Seger later wrote a tribute to Robinson for Rolling Stone, calling him a musician's musician, an artist whose originality stood apart, even among Motown's greatest legends.
What the lyric, what the music, the mood of the music is saying, and kind of tailor the lyric to that.
Seger remembered that the Miracles always closed Motown review shows, not because they had the biggest hits or the flashiest choreography, but because their music alone could bring the house down. While playing bars 6 nights a week, Seger built a medley of 6 Smokey Robinson songs and performed it twice every night. He called it Survival. The crowd demanded it.
Every time they were sure they had you.
The Miracles didn't just inspire Bob Seger, they kept him working, kept him fed, and convinced him that music could truly change a life. 9. Creedence Clearwater Revival. Bob Seger never hid his love for Creedence Clearwater Revival. In 1983, standing on stage at Detroit's Cobo Hall, he told a roaring crowd about a band he had always admired.
Stay separate bands, but we were such good friends. I knew him 49 years. I met him when he was 17, I was 20.
Before launching into a thunderous cover of Fortunate Son. That performance later appeared on his Like a Rock album. Seger and Fogerty were cut from the same cloth. Both had working-class voices. Both wrote about real people living real lives, and both carried an honesty no studio polish could fake. CCR proved you didn't need to be flashy to be powerful. You just had to believe every word you sang. Their swamp rock sound felt raw, real, and earned. Music for people who had lived enough to know authenticity when they heard it. For Seger, Creedence wasn't just a favorite band. They were proof that staying true to yourself was the strongest statement a musician could ever make. 8. The Beatles. When the Beatles arrived in America in 1964, Bob Seger was 19 years old, playing local gigs around Detroit. Almost overnight, everything changed. He was already serious about music, but the Beatles made every young musician dream bigger and work harder.
Play or any big city, and you see what the young bands are playing. They're playing rock and roll.
Seger later recalled how he and his friend Glenn Frey, future co-founder of the Eagles, shared one belief: if you weren't on the radio, you were nobody. And the Beatles were the reason radio suddenly mattered so much. They proved a band could be wildly popular and brilliantly creative at the same time. Their hook-driven songs became a songwriting masterclass for an entire generation. Every melody Seger later perfected, every unforgettable chorus he chased, traced back to what 4 young men from Liverpool showed the world. The Beatles didn't just inspire him, they raised the bar, and Seger spent his career reaching for it. 7. Them. Out of Belfast in the mid-1960s came Them, led by the unmistakable voice of Van Morrison.
But she come around to just about midnight.
Their sound was raw, bluesy, and deeply soulful, music that felt lived in rather than performed. Morrison sang with a rough honesty, like a man who meant every single note. That authenticity struck Seger immediately and never let go. In interviews, Seger often named Bob Dylan and Van Morrison as two of his most important early influences while he was still discovering his own voice.
But most of the times lately, I'll start with music.
He later covered Morrison's song "I've Been Workin'" on his 1973 album back in '72, a choice that wasn't random. You don't cover a song unless it truly matters to you. Them played with emotional intensity, and Seger studied that commitment closely. Morrison sang like he had no other choice but to sing, exactly the kind of truth Seger chased throughout his entire career. 6. The Allman Brothers Band. The Allman Brothers Band played rock music with a freedom few others could match. Their live shows were legendary. Songs stretched, evolved, and transformed every night.
Time coming, but I know change gon' come.
Turning concerts into shared journeys between band and audience. Seger understood that energy deeply. During the same era, he was building his own powerhouse live reputation with the Silver Bullet Band, and the Allman Brothers became one of the standards he measured himself against. Both believed the stage was sacred. A concert wasn't just music, it was an experience people would remember for years. Seger even recorded a cover of Midnight Rider during sessions for his 1972 album, Smokin' OPs, a collection filled with songs that held personal meaning for him. Choosing an Allman Brothers track said everything. They represented the very best of American rock and roll, and Bob Seger never forgot what they proved was possible when musicians truly let the music lead. 5. The Four Tops. Before Bob Seger ever became the voice of the American working class, he was a Motown kid through and through. Growing up in Detroit meant the Four Tops were never just songs on the radio.
Just look over your shoulder.
Their music lived everywhere, in neighborhood bars, passing cars, late-night jukeboxes, and the rhythm of the city itself. Their sound was part of the air young Seger breathed every single day. Led by Levi Stubbs, the group possessed one of the most commanding voices soul music had ever heard. Stubbs didn't simply sing a lyric, he felt it, delivering emotion so powerful it could break your heart without warning. For Seger, who was slowly shaping his own raspy, deeply emotional vocal style, the Four Tops became a blueprint. They showed him that real singing does not come from technique alone. It comes from your entire body, your entire soul, not just your throat. Their harmonies were razor tight, their stage energy was electric, and their songs carried an emotional weight strong enough to survive generations. During the years Seger spent grinding through bars and clubs across Michigan, playing night after night for audiences who wanted authenticity, the Four Tops became part of his musical education. Their music taught him a lesson he never forgot. A great song should not just reach your ears, it should hit you square in the chest. That lesson echoes through Night Moves, Turn the Page, and every song Seger ever wrote that made listeners stop whatever they were doing and truly listen. 4. The Rolling Stones. Bob Seger has never been shy of his admiration for the Rolling Stones. Throughout his entire career, their influence remained constant and undeniable. In Rolling Stone magazine's Music That Made Me feature, Seger named Jumpin' Jack Flash as his all-time favorite Rolling Stones track. He described it simply and honestly, pretty damn strong. a song that pushed his guitar playing to an entirely new level. He admitted he practiced relentlessly, refusing to stop until he could play Keith Richards' legendary riff while singing at the same time. And that is the true mark of a band that matters. They don't just entertain you, they challenge you, they force you to grow. The Rolling Stones represented everything rock and roll was meant to be: raw, dangerous, unpredictable, and alive night after night. They could take the blues and make it feel brand new, then turn around and write a pop song that sounded like a street fight in the best possible way. For Seger, the Rolling Stones were a renewable source of energy and creative fire throughout his life. Their music reminded him again and again that rock and roll should never become too safe. It should have edge, it should have attitude, it should always have teeth. And Seger listened to that lesson every single time. Before we continue, which of this band surprised you? 3. Grand Funk Railroad. Few bands in American rock history share a deeper connection with Bob Seger than Grand Funk Railroad. They emerged from the same Michigan rock scene, fought for the same audiences, and carried the same hard-working, blue-collar spirit that defined Midwestern rock music. Grand Funk drummer Don Brewer once recalled hearing Seger's early recordings and being completely blown away by their raw power. The admiration was mutual, and over time, that respect grew into genuine friendship. Eventually, Brewer joined Seger's Silver Bullet Band, while Grand Funk keyboardist Craig Frost became a longtime and essential member of Seger's touring lineup. These were not just professional collaborations, they were bonds built on shared experiences, musicians who understood each other because they came from the same musical trenches. Grand Funk Railroad played loud, proud, and unapologetically. They filled stadiums long before critics ever took them seriously. For Seger, who spent years being overlooked outside Detroit despite electrifying live audiences, that story felt deeply personal. Grand Funk proved something Seger believed with all his heart: your audience matters more than the press ever will. 2. Fleetwood Mac. Bob Seger watched Fleetwood Mac rise to the very top of the music world in the late 1970s with enormous respect for what they achieved through patience, dedication, and craftsmanship. In a 1977 interview, he specifically mentioned them as one of the great success stories of that era in rock music. His longtime friendship with Glenn Frey gave him a front-row view into that world, a world where songwriting was treated with almost sacred seriousness. Frey encouraged Seger to slow down and fully develop his writing, reminding him that great songs take time. Watching bands like Fleetwood Mac commit completely to their art pushed Seger to raise his own standards higher than ever before. Frey once told him directly, "Take your time and write good songs, because that's the only thing that lasts." Fleetwood Mac embodied that philosophy perfectly. They refined and reshaped their music until every detail felt right. Their album Rumors, released in 1977, the same year Seger finally achieved national breakthrough success, became a global masterclass in songwriting, production, and emotional honesty. For Seger, Fleetwood Mac proved something important. Commercial success and artistic integrity were not opposites. With enough dedication, you could achieve both. 1. The Eagles. No band is more deeply woven into Bob Seger's personal and musical story than the Eagles.
We're all just prisoners here of our own device.
Long before global fame arrived, Bob Seger met a young Glenn Frey on the Detroit music scene in 1967. They were teenagers chasing the same dream on the same streets, bonded by ambition and love for music. Frey even sang backing vocals on Seger's breakthrough single Ramblin' Gamblin' Man, beginning a friendship that would last decades. During the early 1970s, when Seger struggled to fully find his songwriting voice, Frey listened to his new material and told him honestly, "Now you're starting to write. Now you're starting to get it." Watching Frey and Don Henley work with relentless dedication to every lyric and every note pushed Seger to elevate his own standards. Their collaboration reached its peak in 1979 when Seger co-wrote the Eagles' final #1 hit, Heartache Tonight, alongside Frey. When Glenn Frey passed away in 2016, Seger honored his friend by releasing a tribute track, Glenn's Song, as a free download for fans who loved him. The Eagles were never just a band Seger admired from afar. They were family, connected by brotherhood, music, and their shared Detroit roots. From Detroit soul to British rock, from barroom grit to stadium anthems, Bob Seger absorbed every influence around him and transformed it into a sound entirely his own. These are the bands that helped build one of America's greatest voices. If you enjoyed this countdown, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another deep rewind into the legends behind the music. Until next time, from Golden Screen Actor.